Hello, my dear children. Myself Sujata. Hope you all have enjoyed Onam holidays. Okay, in the last class, we learned about the social groups in Europe like liberals, radicals, and conservatives. The industrial society, social change, coming up of socialism in Europe, and the support for socialism. In this session, we will learn about the Russian Empire in 1914, economy and society at the beginning of the 20th century in Russia, socialism in Russia, the 1905 revolution, the First World War, and the Russian Empire. Okay, let us have an introduction of it. When industrialization spread in the parts of Europe, there was spread of socialist ideologies which was against private property and saw it as the root of all social ills. It emphasized on collective social interests. In one of the least industrialized of European states, Russia, this situation was reversed. Socialists could only take over the government in Russia through the October Revolution of 1917. The fall of monarchy and the events of October are normally called the Russian Revolution. How did this come about? What were the social and political conditions in Russia when the revolution occurred? To answer these questions, let us look at Russia a few years before the revolution. The Russian Empire in 1914. In 1914, Tsar Nicholas II ruled Russia and its empire. Besides the territory around Moscow, the Russian Empire included current-day Finland, Latvia, Lithuania, Estonia, parts of Poland, Ukraine, and Belarus. It stretched to the Pacific and comprised today's Central Asian states as well as Georgia, Armenia, and Azerbaijan. The majority religion was Russian Orthodox Christianity, which had grown out of the Greek Orthodox Church. But the empire also included Catholics, Protestants, Muslims, and Buddhists. Okay, now we will look into the economy and the society at the beginning of the 20th century. At the beginning of the 20th century, the vast majority of Russia's people were agriculturalists. About 85% of the empire's population earned their living from agriculture, higher than most of the other European countries. Cultivators produced for the market as well as for their own needs, and Russia was a major exporter of grain. Pocket industries prominent in Pittsburgh and Moscow. Craftsmen undertook much of the production and factories began to be set up in 1890s as Russia's railway network was extended and foreign investment in industry increased. Coal production doubled and iron and steel output quadrupled. Quadrupled means it increased fourfold. Most industry was the private property of industrialists. Government supervised large factories to ensure minimum wages and limited hours of work. But in craft units and small workshops, the working day was sometimes 15 hours. Accommodation varied from rooms to dormitories. Workers were a divided social group. Workers came from villages or settled in industrial areas and were divided by skill. Women made up 31% of factory labor force by 1914, but were paid less than men. Divisions showed up in dresses and manners too. Some workers formed associations to help members in the time of unemployment or financial hardship, but such associations were few. Despite divisions, workers did unite to strike work or to stop work when they disagreed with employers about dismissals or work conditions. In the countryside, peasants cultivated most of the land, but large properties owned by the nobility, the crown, and the Orthodox Church. The peasant groups did not have respect for the nobles and wanted the land of the nobles to be given to them. Unlike the case of the peasants during French Revolution who respected the nobles, the peasants of Russia refused to pay rent and even murdered landlords. Also, in Russia, among the peasants, they pooled their land together periodically and their commune divided it according to the needs of the individual family. Commune means a group of people living together and sharing possessions and responsibilities. Now we'll have a clear understanding of socialism in Russia. All political parties were illegal in Russia before 1914. The Russian Social Democratic Workers' Party was founded in 1898 by socialists who respected Marx's ideas. Because of government policing, it had to operate as an illegal organization. It set up a newspaper, mobilized workers, and organized strikes. Some Russian socialists felt that the Russian peasant custom of dividing land periodically made them natural socialists. So peasants, not workers, would be the main force of revolution. Thus, Russia could become socialist more quickly than other countries. In 1900, the Social Revolutionary Party was formed by the socialists. This party struggled for peasants' rights and demanded that land belonging to nobles be transferred to peasants. Social Democrats disagreed with socialist revolutionaries about peasants. Lenin felt that peasants were not one united group. Some were poor and others rich. Some worked as laborers while others were capitalists who employed workers. Thus could not all be part of a socialist movement. The party was divided over the strategy of organization. Bolshevik group under Vladimir Lenin thought that in a repressive society like Tsarist Russia, the party should be disciplined and should control the number and quality of its members. On the other hand, Mensheviks thought that the party should be open to all, as in Germany. Bolsheviks, Mensheviks, and social revolutionaries are three dominant factions, that is, the political groups in the Russian socialist movement. Now, let us try to know about the 1905 revolution. Russia was an autocracy. As you all know, autocracy is a system of government in which supreme political power to direct all the activities of the state is concentrated in the hands of one person. So Russia was in autocracy. Unlike other European rulers, even at the beginning of the 20th century, the Tsar was not subject to parliament. Liberals in Russia campaigned to end this state of affairs. Together with the social democrats and social revolutionaries, they worked with peasants and workers during the revolution of 1905 to demand a constitution. They were supported in the empire by nationalists. In Poland, for instance, and in Muslim dominated areas by Jadidis, who wanted modernized Islam to lead their societies. The year 1904, Prices of essential goods rose so quickly that real wages declined by 20%. The membership of workers' associations rose dramatically. When four members of the Assembly of Russian Workers, which had been formed in 1904, were dismissed at the Putilov Iron Works, there was a call for industrial action. Over the next few days, over 110,000 workers in St. Petersburg went on strike, demanding a reduction in the working day to 8 hours, an increase in wages, and improvement in working conditions. Beginning of the 1905 revolution, also known as the Bloody Sunday, when the procession of workers, led by Father Gapon, reached the Winter Palace, it was attacked by the police and the Cossacks. Cossacks means members of semi-military communities. Over 100 workers were killed and about 300 wounded. The incident, known as Bloody Sunday, started a series of events that became known as the 1905 Revolution. Strikes took place all over the country and universities closed down when student bodies staged walkouts complaining about the lack of civil liberties. Lawyers, doctors, engineers, and other middle class workers established the Union of Unions and demanded a constituent assembly. During the 1905 revolution, the Tsar allowed the creation of an elected consultative parliament or Duma. For a brief while during the revolution, there existed a large number of trade unions and factory committees made up of factory workers. After 1905, most committees and unions worked unofficially since they were declared illegal. Severe restrictions were placed on political activity. The Tsar dismissed the first Duma within 75 days and the re-elected second Duma within 3 months. He did not want any questioning of his authority or any reduction in his power. He changed the voting laws and packed the third Duma with conservative politicians. Liberals and revolutionaries were kept out. In 1914, war broke out between two European alliances, that is between Germany, Austria and Turkey, France, Britain and Russia. Each country had a global empire and the war was fought outside Europe as well as in Europe. This was the First World War. In Russia, the war was initially popular and people rallied around Tsar Nicholas II. As the war continued, though the Tsar refused to consult the main parties in the Duma, support wore thin. Anti-German sentiments ran high, as can be seen in the renaming of St. Petersburg, a German name, as Petrograd. The Tsarina Alexandra's German origins and poor advisers, especially a monk called Rasputin, made the autocracy unpopular. The First World War on the Eastern Front differed from that on the Western Front. In the West, armies fought from trenches stretched along eastern France. In the East, armies moved a good deal and fought battles, leaving large casualties. Defeats were shocking and demoralizing. Russia's armies lost badly in Germany and Austria between 1914 and 1916. There were over 7 million casualties by 1917. As they retreated, the Russian army destroyed crops and buildings, to prevent the enemy from being able to live off the land. The destruction of crops and buildings led to over 3 million refugees in Russia. The situation discredited the government and the Tsar. Soldiers did not wish to fight such a war. The war also had a severe impact on industry. Russia's own industries were few in number and the country was cut off from other suppliers of industrial goods by German control of the Baltic Sea. Industrial equipment disintegrated more rapidly in Russia than elsewhere in Europe. By 1916, railway lines began to break down. Able-bodied men were called up to the war. As a result, there were labor shortages and small workshops producing essentials were shut down. Large supplies of grain were sent to feed the army. For the people in the cities, bread and flour became scarce. By the winter of 1916, riots at bread shops were common. Okay, now let us recap what we have learned in this session. The Russian Empire in 1914. We discussed about the spread of industrialization in the parts of Europe, economy and society at the beginning of the 20th century in Russia, socialism in Russia, the 1905 revolution and the First World War and the Russian Empire. Okay, now try to do this activity. The year is 1916. You are a general in the Tsar's army on the Eastern Front. You are writing a report for the government in Moscow. In your report, suggest what you think the government should do to improve the situation.